One more week of early voting and then Super Tuesday. So I thought that I've been asked, and so I took a good look at the six proposed constitutional amendments to the state constitution, to the Florida Constitution. And I figured I would take time to sort of break them down for you as I see them. And I'm also going to tell you how I'm going to vote on them. Not that you have to do as I do, obviously, but the judges as well. So there are, gosh, what, five or six judges also that we need to vote whether to retain in the Florida Supreme Court or in the appellate courts. We'll make it easy on the judges. Believe it or not, I'm voting yes on all of the judges. Okay. And they're not, look, there are decisions they made I disagree with, but they're not that bad. As a matter of fact, some of them are pretty good. So I'm voting to retain all of the judges. I'll give you an example. There was one of them, Kemi or Kemily, I can't remember what his name is, but one of them impressed me a lot. I was reading a decision that he made. He was one of three judges for an appeal. And there was a city councilman in Florida who sued a citizen for defamation. Remember, it is harder for a public figure to sue and succeed in a defamation lawsuit. And that's a good thing, because we in America want to be able, to vigorously criticize, be wrong even, when we criticize public figures. I'm considered a public figure. City elected officials are public figures. Celebrities are public figures, and so on and so forth. So it needs to be more difficult for a public figure to succeed in a lawsuit, or it would chill free speech. Everybody be afraid to criticize the government. It needs to be that way. The governing case law is Times v. Sullivan, a 1964 case. It was a Supreme Court decision, and that's been the basic guide. And without getting into too many details about it, I'll just tell you this. One judge disagreed with that decision. He thought, he was one of three judges looking at this appeal. He thought that public figures like him, it should not be harder for public figures to sue and to succeed. It would be better for me, but it would not be better for liberty. And so this judge, even though he disagreed with Times v. Sullivan, he voted with the other two in a 3-0 decision to protect the freedom of speech and to keep it more difficult for public figures to succeed in a defamation lawsuit. So I thought that was very impressive. When I was reading it, I was like, oh, hell no, not this judge. But the fact that he constrained his own, what he wishes was the case, he still followed the case law. And in this situation, I thought it was really so. Yes, on all the judges is what I'm saying. Let me thank a couple of sponsors, and we will go right to the amendments.
Strong, effective leadership. 3 words that could mean the difference between prison and your freedom. I'm Al Saulene, your Panama City Beach lawyer. 850-215-0628.
Don't let back pain and neck pain get you down. Find relief at Brown Chiropractic Center on St. Andrews Boulevard in Panama City. Dr. Sherry Brown helps people heal naturally with chiropractic adjustments and deep tissue massage. Call 769-3777.
You want to look good? You want to feel good? Little John's Big and Tall is where it's at. Right across the street from Sky's Pizza Pie, 5700 North Davis Highway. You can find out more online at littlejohnsbigandtall.com. He's also a member of the iTex trading community, where your iTex dollars are welcome.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you the main place that I went, and I've got my own little sample ballot here, but the main place I went to sort of take a look at this, and it was great, as usual, and it's the James Madison Institute located in Florida. So I'm going to show you the website. It's jamesmadison.org, and it has the 2024 Florida Amendment Guide. And I'm going to go through some of this because it really has some great information in here that I'm going to share with you. But on this one, I hope you appreciate this. You may not. But again, I'm going to go over each one of them in an unbiased way. And then I'm going to tell you how I'm going to vote. But first, I want to share with you a little bit about what is a constitution, right? Like there's 6 proposed constitutional amendments in Florida. And I think a good way to start this would actually be to show you a little bit about the Florida Constitution. So I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can see it. All right. Florida's constitutional history is unique. In less than 2 centuries, Florida has had 6 different constitutions. Our current constitution, ratified in 1968, has been amended 144 times, most recently in 2020. Now, it used to take 67% of the votes of people voting to strike an amendment or to add an amendment. And I wish it was still 67%. It ought to be difficult to add or take away from a constitution. I'll tell you why in a little bit. Now it's only 60%. So if more than 60% of the voters approve one of these measures or all of these measures, they'll become state statute. Florida also boasts the greatest number of ways to amend its constitution. There are 5 ways that an amendment can be proposed on a statewide ballot. 1, from the Florida legislature, a joint resolution. Number 2, a Florida Constitutional Revision Commission from them. 3, a citizens initiative, and 2 of these are, by the way, 2 of the 6 we'll be voting on. 4, a constitutional convention. 5, Florida Taxation and Budget Reform Commission. So I think, on election day, November 5, more than 10 million Floridians will cast their votes. All right. So let's get out of this. And I want to share with you a little bit about what to consider, I think, in a constitution. So a constitution, and I wrote this down. I'm actually going to read it. I may end up writing this into an article. I scratched it down, and I like the way it came out. Is a foundational document that sets up the unchanging structure and rules of government. Therefore, amendments should be difficult to add. Otherwise, you end up with a very long and confusing document that includes a bunch of things that are not structural or rule-based. You end up with things in the Constitution that are legislative in nature. Incidentally, the U.S. Constitution is the oldest and shortest in the whole world. And that's one reason that it's been so good. So with that in mind, let's consider the 6 proposed amendments to the Florida Constitution with that lens. If it's legislative in nature, it does not belong in the Constitution. Second point, when we're considering whether to vote yes or no on these 6 proposed amendments, does it conflict with the U.S. Constitution? If so, it cannot be in the Florida Constitution. While it's true that the federal government is not the boss of the states, as the 10th Amendment makes clear, after all, the states created the federal government and through the Constitution, and the doctrine of statutory construction guarantees that which is created cannot be more powerful, doesn't have more authority than its creator. That's why city ordinances can't supersede county ordinances, because the counties made the cities. And that's why the county ordinances cannot supersede the state statute, because the states created the counties. So that's known as the rules of statutory construction. So also, the federal government cannot supersede the states. The federal government is not the supreme law of the land. The Constitution is. So there is an unless to that, right? The federal government can supersede the states under what conditions? This is short what I'm going to tell you now, but it's going to make, I hope, help make sense when I tell you about these proposed amendments and how I'm voting on them. If the states, or actually the states agreed to delegate certain powers to the federal government, that's what the Constitution was. And those certain powers that the states delegated to its new creation, the federal government, those are the supreme law of the land. And those are found in the Constitution in Article 6, Section 8. They are few and defined. The state said, okay, federal government, we will defer to you on these things. You're the boss on those things, but only those things. And the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Where do we find that? In Article 6. This is super important. Not the Sixth Amendment, Article 6. Okay. In Article 6, because you'll hear people say, oh, the federal government's the supreme law of the land, but they leave out part of it. Here we go. This is very short, but important. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, here's the part they leave out, which shall be made in pursuance thereof. In other words, the federal government can only make laws that are pursuant to the Constitution, not contrary to it, not repugnant to it. It has to be according to it. And all treaties as well. So the Constitution, the laws in pursuance of the Constitution, and all treaties in pursuance of the Constitution, which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. All right? So there is an exception. If a state proposed amendment to the state constitution contradicts a federal law, and that federal law is contrary to the Constitution, then yes, I would vote for that. The states would be telling the federal government, step back, Jack. All right. We never delegated that authority to you. That's important to understand. So while a state, when I say, do any of these proposed amendments violate the Constitution, they can't. If any of them violate a federal law, which violates the Constitution, then it would be okay. All right, let's go. Let's keep going on. We're almost done with this. So the states agree that the Constitution, including the Bill of Rights, can't be violated by the federal government or by the states. The document itself is the supreme law of the land. These same ideas and principles hold true as we consider the 6 proposed amendments in the Florida Constitution. So we're going to be asking ourselves, does the proposed amendment conflict with the U.S. Constitution? And we're also going to be asking ourselves, is the proposed amendment to the state constitution, is it a constitutional issue? Or are they trying to sneak in a legislative issue into the state constitution? Because that would have no business there. So this is the context that I think we all should consider. Now, here's another consideration for you. And this has to do with how I'm going to vote and how you're going to vote. So what is your paramount political value? What's the most important thing that government should do? Is it safety? Is it liberty? Is it fairness? So that's going to influence how you vote as well. So what is your paramount political value? For me, it's liberty all day. So if the proposed amendment is indeed a constitutional issue and not a legislative issue, then I'm going to ask myself this question. Does it expand freedom and protect the family budget? If so, I'll vote yes. If not, it's a hard no. All right. That's going to be how I decide these. Does it expand freedom and protect the family budget? Does it belong in the Constitution, or is it a legislative issue? So let's take a look. We're going to look at I'm at the jamesmadison.org, which is just fantastic. Here they are. These are the 6. Number 1, 2 of them came from citizens. They were citizens initiatives. And the other 4 came from the legislature. All right, the first one. I'm going to try to make this just a little bit bigger so you can see it. All right, that's probably good enough. The first one the state legislature gives us is whether or not to make school board elections partisan starting in 2026 elections, or keep them nonpartisan. So, first question, is this a legislative issue? No. The legislature cannot make that decision. This has to be decided in the state constitution. So therefore, it is a constitutional issue. So this is the merit of this. We can check that box. Now, the question again comes down to what is your paramount political value? Liberty, fairness, safety. Well, that really doesn't apply too much in this. So it comes down to, do you want to know whether a Democrat or a Republican is deciding policy in your school district? So this is completely up to you. I'm on the fence with it, actually, but I'll probably vote yes. I'll probably vote yes. Not that being a Republican guarantees you a better candidate. That's not always the case. And it's not always the case in the inverse. But, and you know, you could find out a little research. But do you want to know as you go in to vote? This one I'm least concerned about, but I'll probably vote yes. All right, that's number one. Number two came from the legislature as well. This one's kind of funky. Enshrines a right to hunt and fish in the state constitution. I'm going to read you the actual ballot language. All right. Where is it here? Okay. Proposing an amendment to the state constitution to preserve forever fishing and hunting, including by the use of traditional methods, as a public right and preferred means of responsibly managing and controlling fish and wildlife, specifies that the amendment does not limit the authority granted to the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. What the hell? Well, that's not really guaranteeing the right to hunt and fish if the bureaucrats are still in charge. So this one's a little bit funky, right? I was excited when I first saw it, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm not nearly as excited about it. But here's what it does. It would prevent wacky legislators from passing state statutes that say that bring restrictions and prohibitions on hunting and fishing. It does do that, but it doesn't do anything to limit the power of the Florida Fish and Wildlife people running around like maniacs. So, is this a constitutional issue? Yes, it is. This is not something that could be legislated. So it is a constitutional issue. Okay, check. Does it expand freedom and protect the family budget? It expands freedom a little bit. I sound like Robert De Niro. A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. It sounds like it expands freedom a little bit. Not nearly as much as I wish. So it is a reluctant yes, because I don't want to add more amendments to the Florida Constitution. I think it has way too many already. but it does expand freedom a little bit. So I'm voting yes on that. I was pissed when I first saw it. I almost said, I'm going to vote no, come back with a stronger amendment. And if you say that and do that, it's fine. I would respect that. All right, let's take a look at number 3. Jeez, glasses. All right, so this came from citizen initiated. And it legalizes, now this isn't exactly what it does, by the way. It's a little tricky. It legalizes recreational marijuana for Floridians and out-of-state visitors 21 and older. All right. Now, let me talk to you a little bit here. So my position, because I'm a liberty guy, on marijuana is that it should be decriminalized. And there shouldn't be permits, which are really just barriers. They're really protection rackets. We're only going to have 6 different people who can sell medical marijuana. Man, that is unbelievable. These little fiefdoms. And so I'm for decriminalizing it. It would be treated sort of like alcohol. That doesn't mean that, a store or a private or a park couldn't say, just like alcohol, you'd be walking around doing it all over the place. But it should absolutely be decriminalized. That's my take on it. But let's look at the constitutional amendment. All right, let's take a look at that. So that's my principle. And that's what I wish it said. But it's first of all, it shouldn't be said here. This is not a constitutional issue. This is a legislative issue all the way. Therefore, I cannot vote for it. It doesn't belong in the Constitution, even if it said what I wanted it to say. This is not a constitutional issue. It is a legislative issue. And because the Florida legislature has a bunch of Republicans that are not liberty-minded when it comes to decriminalizing marijuana, instead they want to see a bunch of regular folks thrown in jail for having a bag of weed. Okay. I mean, how else is law enforcement, going to seize cash and cars? All right. So that is just simply not a constitutional issue. So it is a no. Number 3 is no for that reason, regardless of how you feel about marijuana. And let me tell you something. This has to do with True Leaf. This is really cronyism. If you think that voting yes on Amendment 3 means that you can grow it in your yard, have a little bag on it, a few joints on you, and the cops can't get you, that is not what this does. Okay, so be straight on that. Again, 60% plus 1 for any of these to pass. All right, number 4. Abortion. This was the second one created by citizen initiated rather than from the legislature. So what does this say? So we're going to ask ourselves, is it constitutional in nature? Does it deal with the structure and rules of government itself? We're also going to ask ourselves, is this a legislative issue? And I should have brought this up. These any law needs to be very clear and defined. Laws cannot be vague. All right. They cannot be vague and open up to broad interpretation. That is not a good law. That opens up for discretion and all kinds of stuff. So it has to be very, very specific. Let's see what number 4 says. Amendment to limit government interference with abortion. No law shall prohibit, penalize, delay, or restrict abortion before viability. All right. I'm sorry, let me read this again. No law shall prohibit, penalize, delay, or restrict abortion before viability or when necessary to protect the patient's health as determined by the patient's healthcare provider. This amendment does not change the legislature's constitutional authority to require notification to a parent or guardian before a minor has an abortion. All right. So right now, the new Florida law, I believe, is you cannot have an abortion in Florida after 6 weeks. So they've defined viability. Whether you agree or not, there is a number, right? That's specific, and states have the right to do that. The federal government has no authority at all to be legislating on abortion. The states never gave the federal government that authority. They have no authority. Now, a lot of people want the federal government to do what they want it to do one way or the other, as you know. So states have discretion on this. So this says, what you'll be voting on for 4, there's no definition of viability. That's vague. All right. Secondly, and troubling, it says that no law shall prohibit, penalize, delay, or restrict abortion ever at any month in the 9th month. There's no limit to when, as long as it protects the patient's health as determined by the patient's healthcare provider. That could be depression. That could be anything. And it is, again, very vague and open to discretion. So, like number 3, and this is why these are both citizen initiated, this is a legislative issue. Whether or not you are absolutely pro-life or absolutely pro-choice, I just use those terms for brevity. Whichever you are, if you are an informed voter and somebody who cares about the structure of government, this does not belong on here. So that's a no for several reasons. If it was coming from the legislature, I would oppose it for the reasons I told you. Specifically, that it goes on. There's no time limit. So, but this is not a constitutional issue. This is a legislative issue. So that's a no for me. Doesn't belong on here. All right, number 5. This comes from the legislature, and it is the easiest one for me. It is absolutely a constitutional issue. The legislature cannot do this. So this has to be done through the Constitution. And it is the annual adjustments to the value of certain homestead exemptions, proposing an amendment to the state constitution to require an annual adjustment for inflation to the value of the current or future homestead exemptions that apply solely to levies other than school district levies, and for which every person who has legal or equitable title to real estate and maintains thereon, the permanent residence or of the owner, or another person legally or naturally dependent upon the owner is eligible. This amendment takes effect January 1st, 2025. Yes. Why? Does it expand freedom and protect the family budget? Yes, it protects the family budget. That's a yes. It is constitutional and it protects the family budget. So that's an easy yes for me. All right. And by the way, if you appreciate this, and I feel like there's not going to be these kind of droning on videos when I do them, I just think people don't want to be. This isn't a classroom, Bernie. Don't lecture me. But if you are appreciating it, I wanted to let you know there's a way that you can let me know, and you can become a patron at patreon.com/Bernie Thompson. Throw a tip in the tip jar as little as $5 a month. It's easy. It's anonymous, and you can quit at any time. If you want to make a donation and support my efforts, there is a PayPal link there as well. Or even better, you can subscribe to Substack and you will get a once per week at least behind the scenes video. And boy, for paid subscribers, that's worth it. Get a paid subscription at bernie.substack.com, and now you will get behind the scene videos emailed to your inbox, and you're liable to see just about anything.
Ah, get that thing.
Get out, get out. Go get out, keep fast. What's going on? So I've got less than 2 days to get it all together. I'm nervous because I've never done anything like this before. Nighttime and hot. Another red light. Yellow flies. Okay, he's dead.
Seems white like hell, don't they?
Yes, that's what they are. They're very. They're like the great whites of the insect world.
Right on my arm.
Cracks me up every time. Again, that's at. Oh, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry. Jeez Louise, that's not it. It's Bernie. Here it is. I'm sorry. This is where you can subscribe. Bernie.substack.com. Bernie.substack.com. All right, let's get to the last one, number 6. All right. This one repeals public election financing. So is it a constitutional issue? It is. It cannot be done through the legislature. So yes, it is a constitutional issue. And it is the repeal of public campaign financing. Proposing the repeal of the provision in the state constitution is already, so this is repealing constitutional amendment for the state, which requires public financing for campaigns and candidates for elective statewide office who agree to campaign spending limits. So in other words, if you want to run for governor and you agree, okay, I'm not going to spend more than X amount of dollars, then you get taxpayer money to run for that office. So right now, that's the way it is. And I do not believe in welfare for politicians or even aspiring or perspiring politicians. So yeah, I want to repeal that. Why? Does it expand freedom or protect the family budget? It protects the family budget. Our tax money should not be used to finance anybody's campaign, statewide or otherwise. So there you have it. Again, recap, and I'm just going to say whether I'm voting yes or no and whether it's a constitutional issue. Number 1, school board elections, make it partisan from 2026 on. It is a constitutional issue. It cannot be done in the legislature. And while I'm tepid on this one, I'm going to vote yes. But again, I mean, if you vote no, it doesn't mean you're not a liberty person at all. In fact, I'm tempted to vote no. Number 2, it is a constitutional issue, cannot be done in the state legislature, enshrines a right to hunt and fish in the state constitution. Golly, it still gives the Fish and Wildlife Commission authority. So bureaucrats are still deciding your right to fish and hunt. And so it's very weak, in my opinion, but it does prohibit the legislature from passing laws to prohibit or restrict hunting and fishing. So I'll vote yes on that. Number 3, citizen initiated legalizes recreational marijuana for Floridians and out-of-state visitors 21 or older. While I am a liberty person and I absolutely believe marijuana should be decriminalized and treated sort of like alcohol, but you ought to be able to grow it. You ought to be able to smoke it, and you shouldn't be thrown in jail for it. And law enforcement shouldn't be taking your stuff for it. So, however, that's not what this is about. I'm telling you, it is not what this is about. This is a crony deal that is pushed by True Leave. It is not going to keep you safe from cops if you're walking around with your own pot in a baggie or a joint. So that's not what this is. Secondly, it is legislative in nature and does not belong in a constitution. So I'm voting no. Number 4, citizen initiated, legalizes abortion before fetal viability. uh, legalizes abortion before fetal viability or when deemed necessary for health of the mother. It is vague. It would allow for 9th month abortions as long as a healthcare provider says that, but those are separate issues. This is not constitutional in nature. It is legislative in nature. This is not about the structure of government or the rules of government. This is about citizens. So this is a legislative issue. It's a no. Number 5 rather. Adds inflation adjusted value to the homestead tax exemption. This is a constitutional issue. It cannot be done in the legislature. It protects the family budget. Yes, I'm voting for it. And finally, number 6, repeals public election financing, which is currently in the Constitution. That needs to go. It is a constitutional issue, cannot be done in the legislature. And no, tax money should not be funding campaigns. There you have it. All right. So early voting next week. Super Tuesday coming up quick. Holy smokes. This is a crazy time. This is a crazy time. As far as the judges, I said earlier, I believe there are 5. I thought there were 5, maybe 6, but all of them, believe it or not, are a thumbs up in terms of voting for them to retain them. There are not any on there that are, coming up with crazy, woke, unbelievable nonsense. All of them, I don't agree with some of their decisions, but again, one of them who I disagree with most philosophically has shown good. He's really stayed with what the governing law is. What does the Supreme Court say on this issue? And even though he disagrees, he's true to the law. So all of them, I'm voting for. Anyway, that's it. I just wanted to do this for you. I went a little longer, I think, than I planned to, but you can always, forward through it. All right, with that, I'm going to wrap it up. And happy voting. Get out there and do it. Bring family, bring friends. Unless you don't know anything. And if you don't know anything, I don't want you to vote. Don't rock the vote. Go rock a boat. Go fishing. But don't be voting if you don't know shit. All right, I'll see you next time.